A $400 million fortune vanished. A champion's fitness empire reduced to empty storefronts and lawsuits. In boxing, the lights are blinding and the money is legendary, but behind every knockout and pay-per-view payday lurks a ruthless reality. Tonight, we're tearing down the curtain on the scandals within the boxing world. Olympic icons left broken by their own teams. World champions forced to pawn their belts. Investors and employees fighting for scraps after the collapse of a superstar's brand. These are the stories boxing hopes you'll forget. Floyd Mayweather's name is synonymous with money. The money team hats, the diamond-encrusted watches, the man who is allergic to not flexing. Mayweather built a brand on the idea that he never loses. But in 2025, the empire he licensed to gyms across America was in freefall. Mayweather Boxing and Fitness launched with a promise. Train like a champion. Own a piece of the legend. Franchisees lined up, some pouring in over $1 million each, lured by the Mayweather Money Team persona. The pitch was irresistible. Exclusive appearances, corporate support, and a slice of the billion-dollar fitness boom. But the reality? A slow-motion train wreck. By mid-2025, more than half of the 70 US locations had shuttered. Investors who'd sunk their life savings were left with empty storefronts and lawsuits. Mayweather, who once promised free promotional support, started charging up to $50,000 just to show up. Franchisees who'd paid for the name found themselves abandoned, with little more than a logo and a stack of unpaid bills. The problems ran deep. The boutique fitness market was already crowded, and Mayweather's gyms struggled to stand out. In Scottsdale, Arizona, a brand new gym closed within months, its equipment auctioned off to cover debts. In Elk Grove, California, an eviction notice was taped to the door after $30,000 in unpaid rent. Mayweather himself distanced from the chaos, claiming he was just a licensor, not an operator. But for the franchisees, the damage was done. Lawsuits piled up, with some seeking over $8 million in damages for misrepresentation and broken promises. The collapse wasn't just about money. It was about trust and the illusion that a famous name guarantees success. Some lost their homes, others their retirement savings. Employees who once bragged about working for a champion now found themselves protesting outside shuttered gyms, demanding wages they'd never see. In the end, Mayweather's fitness venture was a branding play, not a business strategy. Investors paid for a name, not a system. The result? A cautionary tale for anyone who thinks a famous face guarantees a winning business. In boxing, as in business, not every bet pays off. Yet, as devastating as Mayweather's downfall was for his investors, it pales in comparison to the spectacular implosion of a heavyweight legend whose fortune once seemed untouchable. Mike Tyson's rise was meteoric. The youngest heavyweight champion in history, a cultural icon, and a man who once earned $400 million in the ring. But by 2003, Tyson was broke, filing for bankruptcy with debts topping $27 million. How does a man who made more money than most of us could ever imagine lose it all? Start with the mansions. A 52-room Connecticut estate, multiple homes across the country. Add in over 100 luxury cars, Bentleys, Lamborghinis, Ferraris. Then there were the tigers. Yes, real Bengal tigers, costing $70,000 each, with $200,000 a year in upkeep. Tyson's gifts were legendary. A $2 million gold bathtub for his then-wife, Robin Givens. But the spending was just the beginning. Tyson owed $17.4 million in taxes to US and British authorities. His divorce from Monica Turner cost him another $9 million. Lawsuits piled up, including a $100 million claim against promoter Don King, which settled for $14 million. By the time the dust settled, Tyson's fortune was in shambles. Fast forward to 2024. At 58, Tyson returned to the ring for a spectacle, an 8-round bout against YouTuber Jake Paul at AT&T Stadium in Texas. The fight was pure theater. Paul, 27, won by unanimous decision, but the real drama was outside the ropes. Observers noted Tyson's restraint, his limited punches, and the sense that the fight was more performance than competition. Sylvester Stallone even called it an Oscar-winning performance, fueling rumors the fight was staged. Promoters and Paul denied any rigging, but the whispers persisted. For Tyson, the fight was a payday, one last shot at the spotlight, and a chance to cash in on his legend. His story is a warning. In boxing, fortunes can vanish overnight, and comebacks are often more about the money than the glory. But Tyson's bankruptcy wasn't just about excess. It was about the people around him, the managers, promoters, and hangers-on who took their cut, the bad investments, the lack of oversight. Tyson himself has admitted he was a young kid with too much money and no guidance. His story is a masterclass in how quickly it can all disappear, and how even the biggest names can end up with nothing. Tyson's story is jaw-dropping, but he's not the only one whose inner circle played a role in their undoing. Sometimes the real drama happens outside the ring, where reputations are made, broken, and sometimes miraculously rebuilt. Mazar Majid, once infamous for orchestrating a cricket spot-fixing scandal, Majid reinvented himself as a boxing advisor, guiding the careers of stars like Chris Eubank Jr. But in 2025, his past caught up with him, this time in the bankruptcy courts. The numbers were almost laughable compared to the millions swirling around boxing. Majid was declared bankrupt over a £56,778.59 legal bill, the fallout from a failed claim to a 50% stake in EMDED boxing management. The case was dropped, and Majid was left holding the bag for legal costs. But bankruptcy didn't end his influence. Majid remained a power broker, orchestrating Eubank Jr.'s signing with Boxer, a promoter with an exclusive Sky Sports deal. Investigations revealed financial ties between Boxer and a consultancy owned by Majid's wife, raising eyebrows about transparency and compliance. Majid's past is a rap sheet: 32 months in prison for cricket spot fixing, later jailed for tax fraud. His presence at the Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn weigh-in sparked a near brawl over glove selection. Sky Sports hesitated to broadcast the fight, wary of Majid's involvement. Yet, in boxing, redemption is always for sale. Majid's story is a masterclass in reinvention and a reminder that in this sport, scandal is just another round. But what makes Majid's saga so remarkable is the way he's managed to stay relevant. Despite his criminal record, despite bankruptcy, he's still in the room where the deals are made. It's a testament to the power of connections, and a warning about the sport's willingness to look the other way when money is on the line. But what happens when the betrayal comes not from a rival or a regulator, but from the very person entrusted to protect your legacy? The next chapter reveals just how costly misplaced trust can be. Michael Spinx was a champion's champion, Olympic gold medalist, two-division world title holder, and a man who earned $24 million in the ring. But by 2011, Spinx was fighting a different kind of battle against his own promoter's estate. The villain in this story, Butch Lewis, Spinx's longtime promoter and confidant. Spinx alleged that Lewis had mismanaged his fortune, using the boxer's earnings for personal and business expenses, even supporting his own children. When Lewis died, Spinx filed suit against the estate, naming Robert L. Johnson, founder of BET, as an executor. The allegations were damning. Lewis had commingled funds, failed to honor agreements to manage Spinx's money, and left the champ with unpaid bills totaling $50,000 a month. Spinx was forced to dip into his pension and retirement funds, incurring heavy taxes and penalties. His health insurance lapsed, and the financial strain mounted. By December 2024, Spinx's net worth was estimated at just $5 million, a fraction of what he'd earned. His story is a cautionary tale about trust, oversight, and the dangers of handing your fortune to someone else. In boxing, the hardest hits sometimes come from the people in your own corner. Spinx's case also highlights a broader issue in boxing: the lack of financial literacy and support for athletes. Too often, fighters trust the wrong people, sign away their earnings, or simply don't understand the business side of the sport. For Spinx, the cost was everything he'd worked for, a lifetime of sacrifice, gone in a heartbeat. And while Spinx's millions vanished in a haze of broken promises, another champion's financial nightmare would play out in the harsh glare of the courtroom, where every punch lands on your bank account. Ricky Burns was a hero in the ring, a three-weight world champion, beloved in Scotland and respected worldwide. But in 2015, Burns was forced to declare bankruptcy, his assets totaling just £228 against debts nearing £420,000. The culprit? A brutal legal war with his former promoter, Frank Warren. Burns left Warren's stable in 2013, alleging unpaid purses. Warren sued for £2 million, claiming breach of contract and lost earnings. The High Court dismissed most of Warren's claims as fanciful, but ruled that Burns owed £72,000 in unpaid management commission. Burns was awarded £102,000 in unpaid purse money, but the funds were tied up in Warren's company, which had entered liquidation. The legal fees alone were staggering: £200,000 for his own lawyers, £170,000 for Warren's damages and costs. For Burns, the fight outside the ring was more punishing than any opponent. His bankruptcy is a stark reminder. In boxing, contracts can be as dangerous as uppercuts, and the cost of a bad deal can last a lifetime. Burns's ordeal also exposed the murky world of boxing contracts. Fighters often sign away their rights, lured by promises of big paydays. But when disputes arise, the legal system can be just as unforgiving as any opponent. For Burns, the dream of financial security turned into a nightmare of courtrooms and creditors. If you thought legal battles were brutal, the next story takes us into the world of power, politics, and the kind of scandal that can destroy not just a career, but a life. Rudel Obrea was once the pride of Romanian boxing, a silver medalist at the European Championships, a bronze at the Worlds, and later president of the Romanian Boxing Federation. But his story took a dark turn, ending in scandal, prison, and tragedy. Obrea's rise was meteoric. He led the federation from 2004 to 2012, held positions in the European Boxing Confederation, and was a power broker in the International Boxing Association. But in 2018, the Gala Butte scandal exploded. Obrea was convicted of money laundering, tax evasion, and bribery, sentenced to 5 years in prison. 2 years earlier, he'd received a suspended sentence for influence peddling, soliciting €1 million to intervene in a legal case. While serving his sentence, Obrea was diagnosed with advanced pancreatic cancer. In July 2022, he was granted temporary release for treatment, but the reprieve was short-lived. He died in March 2023 at just 57. Obrea's journey from celebrated athlete to convicted felon is a sobering lesson in the perils of power, the temptations of corruption, and the fragility of reputation. In boxing, as in life, the fall can be swift and final. But Obrea's story is also about the dangers of unchecked ambition. As he climbed the ranks of sports administration, the lines between right and wrong blurred. The very skills that made him a champion, drive, determination, a willingness to bend the rules, became his undoing. In the end, the price of power was everything. But even as the mighty fall, new stars are always rising, until the ghosts of their past come back to haunt them at the worst possible moment. Florian Maru was a rising star, a welterweight champion with a 13-1-1 record, beloved in Albania and respected across Europe. But in 2025, his career was derailed by a ghost from the past, a nightclub fight in Thessaloniki, Greece, dating back to 2010. Maru's troubles began with a conviction for wounding and illegal possession of a weapon. He served 1.5 years of a 7-year sentence, but the case never truly closed. In December 2024, Maru was arrested in Germany on an international warrant. Released, he was immediately arrested again in London, this time awaiting extradition to Greece. Maru agreed to return and serve the remainder of his sentence. The timing couldn't have been worse. At the peak of his career, with the IBF International welterweight title under his belt, Maru's future was suddenly in doubt. His story is a reminder. In boxing, the past is never far behind. One bad night, one bad decision can haunt a fighter for years. And sometimes the biggest opponent isn't in the ring, it's the law. Maru's legal saga also raises questions about the pressures athletes face. The nightclub incident was a moment of violence, But it was also a symptom of a larger problem: the lack of support for young fighters, the temptations of fame, and the ever-present risk of self-destruction. For Maru, the fight for redemption is just beginning. And for some fighters, the real struggle begins after the final bell. What happens when the spotlight fades, but the consequences of the ring linger on? Jonty Willis was a prodigy, a U.S. national super heavyweight champion in 2006, a promising pro with a 9-10-1 record. But after the final bell, Willis's life unraveled. The warning signs were there. In 2014, Willis was arrested for domestic violence assault and felony harassment involving the mother of his child. The incident was reportedly linked to behavioral changes following a head injury, a grim reminder of boxing's hidden toll. Willis's story is all too common. The transition from the ring to real life is fraught with danger: legal troubles, health issues, and the loss of identity that comes when the cheers fade. For Willis, the combination proved devastating. His struggles highlight the need for better support systems for athletes leaving the sport. In boxing, the fight doesn't end when you hang up the gloves. Sometimes it's just beginning. But Willis's case is also a window into the long-term effects of head trauma. Boxing is a brutal sport, and the damage isn't always visible. For Willis, the blows he took in the ring may have changed him forever. His story is a call to action, for better care, more research, and a recognition that the cost of glory can be far higher than anyone realizes. But sometimes, the cost of chasing glory is paid in something far more precious than money or reputation. The next story is a sobering reminder of just how high the stakes can be. Kenneth Agono was just 22, a rising Filipino bantamweight, undefeated, and fighting on Manny Pacquiao's blow-by-blow series. On May 6, 2023, Agono won a unanimous decision over Jason Facularin. Moments later, as the official announcement was read, he collapsed in his corner. The diagnosis was grim: a brain hemorrhage. Agono was rushed to Imus Doctors Hospital, placed in a coma, and never woke up. 4 days later, he was gone. The boxing community rallied. Pacquiao covered Agono's medical expenses and brought his family to his bedside. The Games and Amusements Board investigated, finding no negligence in the fight's organization. Agono's death is a stark reminder of the sport's dangers. For every champion who cashes million-dollar checks, there are hundreds who risk everything for a shot at glory. In boxing, the price of a dream can be everything you have. But Agono's story is also about the resilience of the boxing community. In the face of tragedy, fighters, promoters, and fans came together to support his family, honor his memory, and demand better safety measures. His legacy is a call for change, a reminder that no victory is worth a life. And even for those who survive the ring, the fight for legacy never ends. The final chapter brings us to a modern icon whose battles outside the ropes may define his career as much as any victory inside them. Canelo Alvarez is boxing royalty, a multi-division world champion, a pay-per-view king, and a man whose every move is scrutinized. But behind the highlight reels and sold-out arenas, Canelo's career has been dogged by controversy, legal battles, and allegations that refuse to die. In 2018, Canelo tested positive for clenbuterol, a banned substance. He blamed contaminated meat in Mexico, and a hair follicle test came back clean. Still, he was suspended for 6 months, and his rematch with Gennady Golovkin was postponed. The drama didn't end there. In 2020, Canelo filed a $280 million lawsuit against Golden Boy Promotions, Oscar de la Hoya, and DAZN, alleging breach of contract. The dispute ended with Canelo becoming a free agent, free to negotiate his own fights. But the shadows linger. In May 2025, Jermall Charlo accused Canelo of long-term PED use and suggested some of his fights were scripted. Around the same time, Jaime Munguia, a fighter trained by Canelo's coach Eddie Reynoso, tested positive for exogenous testosterone metabolites. Munguia's team denied intentional doping, but the scrutiny on Team Reynoso intensified. Canelo has always denied intentional doping, but the combination of past positive tests, legal battles, and new accusations has cast a pall over his legacy. In boxing, reputation is everything, and once it's tarnished, it's almost impossible to restore. Canelo's story is a study in the complexities of modern boxing. The money, the fame, the pressure to perform. It all comes at a cost. For Canelo, the fight for his legacy may be the toughest battle of all. From Mayweather's failed fitness empire to Tyson's $400 million meltdown, from legal brawls to tragic deaths, these stories reveal the true cost of boxing's biggest scandals. For every champion who rises, there's a cautionary tale of hubris, betrayal, and loss. In this sport, wealth can disappear as quickly as it arrives. The hands that lift a championship belt can just as easily sign away a future. The names that fill arenas can wind up in bankruptcy court, and often the fiercest adversary isn't across the ring, it's the system itself. Boxing is more than a sport. It's a high-stakes drama where chasing greatness can cost you everything. Thanks for watching. Producing this video took dozens of hours of research. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the wild world, please like, subscribe, and share your own stories in the comments. For more exposés on the rich, the infamous, and the audacious, click on the next video here. Behind every fortune is a story worth telling or worth exposing. See you on the next one.